Okay, so so we'll start by you just for the camera saying your name, where you were born, when you were born, and where you currently live.
Okay. My name is Wesley Reid, and I was born in Bowling Green, Kentucky, July the 14th, 1943. And if you want to be even more specific, it was Sunday afternoon about 2:15. I eventually wound up uh, being educated in Chattanooga, Tennessee, although I had started my education in Louisville, Kentucky. During those years, my father was a pastor, so we traveled a lot. And now I live permanently in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's because the church where I pastored kept me here 42 years, and so I just remained.
Okay, so start by talking a little bit about like your early childhood life up until like your teenage years. So, for example, um, what was your household like? Like how many people lived in your house? That sort of stuff.
I grew up, well, I was born in Bowling Green, and there were already two boys in the house. I made the third one in the house, and my father was moved from Bowling Green in September to Paducah, Kentucky, where my youngest brother Joe was born. And so we grew up in a fun-loving house. We were all boys, and so I knew nothing about girls as far as how they grow, and the periods in their lives that bring about change.
Yeah.
And so that never took place. We all played together uh, because my father was a pastor. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough to make it. That was in my early days. And then my dad got moved to Louisville, Kentucky in I think it was 46. And it was there that I started what you all call kindergarten. Uh,
What
well,
did y'all call it?
uh, I don't even remember, but I know the first grade, though, I knew I started first grade in Louisville, Kentucky. And 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 I stayed there, I guess, for a couple of years, and then we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I was in the third grade.
So you really grew up in Chattanooga.
I really grew up in Chattanooga. There's no picture.
Oh no. Still recording. It's okay.
Yeah, I really grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A lot of fun days there. I was always, and this is no pat on the back, but I was always one of the smart boys. Back in that day, boys were not expected to be smart in school.
Mm-hmm.
It was just girls who were supposed to be smart. But then I happened to come along when there were about three or four of us who were really the A students in our class.
Mm-hmm.
And then, is that as far as you want me to go?
Keep going.
All right. And so we went to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I started, the third grade? Yeah, in Knoxville. And went on to junior high school. And I was always part of the smart crowd. Made all A's. And back in that day, the teacher would put a numerical number. For instance, you could make a 90 on your paper, and that was an A minus.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if any time that I made less than 93 on a paper, because 93 was the piece that started the A crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made anything less than a 93, I knew that the teacher had messed up counting. And I remember so vividly going to one teacher after class and said, "You got to redo this because I've counted and you made a mistake in your counting." And so I wound up making, hey, and I think that was because I believed in myself that I should always,
Mm-hmm.
that I should always make an A. It was just not in me to make less than an A. And it was not necessarily driven into me by my parents. It was my own self push.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wound up becoming a perfectionist, I think. And so when I was in, I guess, the seventh grade, that's when I was supposed to be smart with the rest. There was a certain group of us
Mm-hmm.
in the math department who was supposed to be so brilliant, and we would be put into contests with math students grades higher than we were, and we would always come out winners. So that was an exciting time. Then we moved to from Knoxville to Chattanooga, where I really began growing, and I think that was the eighth grade. Yeah, eighth grade.
So what was it like growing up in Chattanooga?
Well, and as I was growing up, families just were families. We were all together. We were always in someone's house, and usually it was our house because we had a TV, a
Mm.
black and white TV, and we were one of the few people who had a black and white TV. Not because my parents could afford it, but my brother Walter worked at a furniture store
Mm-hmm.
in Louisville, Kentucky, who sold TVs as well. And so he sent his mother a TV. And so always we were involved. But now let me back up a minute, if I may. Uh, I started when I was in Knoxville in school. I think that was the formative years. Uh, it was there that I determined what I wanted. I took a paper route to help another friend, and I made $1 per week
Mm.
carrying the morning paper.
What
It
do you
was,
think that's equivalent to in today's
oh,
terms?
oh my goodness, I really wouldn't know, Riley. But the interesting thing was my mother would say to us, it said to me in particular, I cannot buy, and that was the era of colored jeans.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And she said, I cannot afford to buy colored jeans. I buy you the blue jeans because they were cheaper. I said, that's all right. That's all right. I make $1 a week. And so I put my jeans, they were purple, green, and brown,
Mm-hmm.
in the layaway. And I paid $1 a week to get them out of the layaway. That's when my concept of taking care of me developed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Knoxville was interesting. I hated to leave Knoxville. That's where I was beginning to make friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so moving to Chattanooga, I realized that the class and I thought about this the other day, that the Chattanooga school system was not as strong as the Knoxville school system. It was when I first went to the eighth grade English class, and they were talking about contractions. I had already done this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they were stumped, I raised my hand, and the teacher said, oh, you know? I said, yes, ma'am, so and so and so. So it was there. And young people will like this or may not like it. I remember in Knoxville, I think it was Knoxville, either Knoxville or Chattanooga, I had all A's except one.
Mm-hmm.
That was in Knoxville. I mean, Chattanooga. The reason I remember it is because that was back in the days when the teachers would paddle their hand.
Mm.
I had all A's and one B. And I got paddled because I got one B.
Really?
And the teacher said, you're getting this because your English teacher said I think it was the English teacher, whoever it was, said, you played, but you could have had an A, but you played. And so I got this
Mhm.
for playing. But in high school, all A's in English. I was just a good student.
What was your social life like in once you got in high school?
In high school, my social life was interesting because I had a friend that had a car.
Mhm.
So I was able to run around with him in his car. But the school where I was, Howard High School, was on the south side. And it was the only high school that had uh, senior high school. All the black children in Chattanooga graduated from the black high school. We passed all the white schools to get to the black high school.
Mhm.
But I always had friends, and my friends had cars.
That was strategic.
Strategic. But the interesting thing is, the four of us that really ran together in my latter days of high school, all were A students. But I always said, let me get my homework done. Then we're going to go riding and have fun.
What were some other places y'all went to a lot? Did you have like certain spots that you guys always like to hang out at, or?
Well, it was more that we hung out at each other's house. No, we hung out at their houses, not at my house, but at their houses. They just happened to be girls.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean anything now. Okay. but always we always hung out together. We all made A's together, so we were close in school. You saw one of us, you saw all of us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What were some? Did you eat out when you were living there, or did you mostly eat at home?
I ate at home. I didn't have eating out money.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I ate at home.
Gotcha. What was like your favorite thing that your mom used to make?
Oh my God. That's an interesting question. I can't even remember. But let me say this about my mom's cooking. She was a career woman. She used to teach.
Mhm.
And she didn't really do much home ec.
No.
She reminds me of some people I know. and also, and also, my dad didn't believe in eating pork.
Mhm.
So the seasoning was not, the kind of seasoning that African Americans did back in that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, talk a little bit about your parents.
My parents were interesting. My dad was short, 5'3". My mother was about 5'6" or 5'7". But my dad was the head of the house. I mean, the smallest thing in the house. But when he spoke, everybody got in line.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember your question.
Like, just talk about them. What were they like? Where were they from? That sort of stuff.
All right. My dad was born in Tennessee, in a place called, I think he was born outside of Clarksville, Tennessee, but grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in an area where African Americans live.
You know the name of it? The area?
Oh, man. Let me come back to it. I'll remember it.
Mhm.
He was highly smart, highly intelligent, but called himself tough. And I think it's because he was a small fella.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, he can call himself tough. My mother was born in an area called Murray, Kentucky. she went to she went to a college. Didn't finish there, but took credits later. She never worked outside of the home. She came. Her family came from Virginia, a mixture of Cherokee Indians and African Americans. Her dad would not allow his girls to work for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the day when they were supposed to work for white people,
Yeah.
cleaning houses, washing and ironing. But her dad wouldn't allow that to happen. And so she was a good mother, an understanding mother, thrifty mother, always with us. My dad was a pastor, but he never really went with us to games and all of that stuff. But we knew that he would be there for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the reason I'm so careful about how I handle my life is that I want to make sure that my family has everything that it needs. I don't know if that answered any of your questions.
Yeah, it did. So, what did you have any? Well, just to refresh, how many total siblings were in your house when you were growing up?
Or in my house,
Mm-hmm.
or just in the family?
Do both.
Let's talk about in the family.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's first wife died of the yellow fever.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 children born to that union. My dad's second wife, who was my mother, had 8 children, which means there were 11 of us. And I'm number 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we call the knee baby. Yeah.
So, did you have any siblings that you were? I'm assuming you did have siblings that you were closer to than other ones. Who were the ones?
My closest ones were Clyde and Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm between them. Clyde was the, back in that day, they called them mentally retarded.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we've got another title for them. But the 3 of us lived together from 1956 on. We were the only ones in the house then.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated from high school in 61. So for 5 years, it was the 3 of us. So I was exceptionally close.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the things you guys liked to do together?
Wrestle. There was one game that we played where you put a bucket of water on the top of the bathroom door.
Uh-oh.
And you tell the other one, go in the bathroom and get such and such. And when you push the door open, the water fell on you. It was those kind of games. We played softball together. You know, those kind of things.
Did you ever play any sports?
No, I did not play sports. I was always in the choir,
Mm-hmm.
which was one of my fortes. And I think another reason I didn't play sports is as a young boy I played sandlot football, you know, at the center.
Mm-hmm.
And I broke my collarbone.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And that just turned you off from...
No, it didn't really turn me off, but I didn't want to put in all that time exercising and doing all that food. No.
Yeah, I get that.
You? Yeah.
So, what was your very first job you ever had?
Carrying the newspaper.
Well,
You want after that?
one, like a
A full-time job.
Yeah.
Not in college and all of that. You're talking about a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
The full-time job took place after I got out of seminary. I was pastoring the church, but I also worked at Zales Jewelers.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first African American salesman of Zales Jewelers, which was one of the major jewelry stores.
Still is.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I was so conscious of building financial wealth that not only did I pastor the church, work at Zales Jewelers, but I was invited to teach 3 courses at a junior college.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that took care of those. Then at night when I left, because I worked at the jewelry store, and on lunchtime, I went to the junior college and taught class. Then I went back to work at the jewelry store. We got off at 6:30, and from 8 to 9, I was, I guess you call them telemarketers now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was making sure that I could take care of Kathy and me,
Mm-hmm.
and then have some money for later in life.
Mm-hmm. So, do you remember the first time that you voted? And what election was it?
Oh,
and who did you vote for?
The first time I voted, and I can't remember the year, but I do remember voting for Estes Kefauver as the senator in Tennessee.
Really? How did that make you feel? Your first time ever voting?
Oh my, I was overjoyed.
Really?
I was overjoyed to vote.
Okay, so you went to college. You went to Wilberforce.
Right.
So, what made you choose that school?
As a boy, I would always read the AME church paper,
Mm-hmm.
and they always talked about Wilberforce. And that's what brought me to Wilberforce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, did you have any other schools on your list?
No.
Or was that just your number
That
one?
was it.
That was it. How did your family feel about you choosing to go there?
They were excited that I was going to college.
Mm.
They were very excited.
How much did they help you when it came to paying for it and that sort of stuff?
All right, my daddy paid. I was on a work study program.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever had to be paid, he paid it. Now, this is one of the interesting things, is that school books cost around $15.
I wish.
And so he bought those. And I remember this very vividly, and I was thinking about it last week. In my second year in college, I got $17 all year from home.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of the time, I just made it with however I could make it.
Mm-hmm.
Wilberforce was a great opportunity. And you remember now I was on the work study program. And so my last year I had worked enough hours on the work study program that my daddy didn't have to pay anything in my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
He sent me the check. He always sent me the check to pay the bill.
Why do you think that is?
Because he wanted me to understand that's your bill that school has. And now you're responsible for paying it. I'm going to give you the money to pay it. And so when he sent me the check, I sent it back to him.
Hmm.
And I know that he was just beyond joy that I was honest with the money.
That's good. So, can you remember how you felt while you were getting ready, coming up to starting your freshman year? What were some things you were excited about starting college, or scared about, or anything?
When I started college, I had already spent the summer in Ohio
Mm-hmm.
with my sister and brother-in-law. So my sister had already, started buying stuff to make sure I had whatever I needed. And so she and my brother-in-law took me to Wilberforce. It was only about 50 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was real excited to go to college. Real excited. I was, and the interesting thing is, I was placed, I rated high on the scores.
Mm-hmm.
And I was placed in the toughest English class. And even though we were high scored on the test, we made B's and C's. I
Mm-hmm.
made a C.
How'd that make you feel after getting
Bad.
A's and?
Bad. But what really made me upset was those who scored lower on the test got into a different class. They were making A's.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying to myself, I should have messed up so I could have been over there. I could have made all A's. Yeah. So that threw me a little curve.
What were some things you were involved in at school?
Well, I sang in the traveling choir. We had what was called a pre-theology club. Those were the young preachers on campus. And I was a major player in that. I was one of the ring leaders the student body. And so the president relied heavily on me. Uh, you may have heard of Floyd Flake, who's a congressman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he came a year after I came. So we were like brothers, and so the president always relied on the two of us
Mm-hmm.
to sort of be the liaison with the student body and the faculty.
Mm. Did you feel pressure with that? That them
No,
requiring that of you, or did you like it?
I was having fun. I was having fun.
Mm. Was your social life similar or like different to the way it was when you were in high school, as far as having a lot of friends and that sort of thing?
I always had friends. I don't know why that was, but everybody, I was always friends. But at Wilberforce, it's like a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was more family than friends. So you knew everyone.
Mm-hmm. Was that a good thing or a bad
That
thing?
was a great thing.
Mm.
Great thing.
Let's see. What are some of your favorite college memories?
One college memory. What was I getting ready to say on that? Slipped my mind. I suspect that one memory was being able to be all right with everyone. The next memory was meeting Kathy, which was comical.
When did you meet her? What year?
My junior year was her freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the stub, and I just said, "Oh, I'll walk you to the dorm tonight." And I went on about my business. I forgot all about it. And I look up, and there she's standing waiting for me to take her to back to her dorm. That was an interesting memory. Memory. I'm trying to think of some other ones. But college life was fun to me.
Mm-hmm. So, when you said you met Grandma your junior
Year.
and that day that you walked her back, you didn't think about it much else afterward.
No,
What made you?
I don't know.
You don't know?
But we wound up. I'd take her to the meals. Then we sang in the choir together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we just Grew up together.
That's nice. So, once you graduated or you were getting ready to graduate, what were some of the future plans that you had for after graduation, and how many of them did you actually do and how many didn't? Or did you do everything that you planned
Okay.
on doing?
After graduating from college,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to go to seminary. The thing was, where? There's a seminary on the campus of Wilberforce. By that, I would have stayed and been there with Kathy. But the recruiter came from Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta. And it was so exciting. And he talked about scholarships. And then my daddy was presiding elder or supervisor of the churches in the Chattanooga area. Mm-hmm. And one of the pastors had walked off from his church in March or April. I'm graduating. And my dad says, I want you to come, if you will, and take care of this church for me. And at the same time, I'd be in Chattanooga, and only a couple of hours away from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So I got the scholarship to Atlanta, to the seminary. And so I could go to school Monday through Friday, catch the bus and get back to Chattanooga and pastor the church. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about seminary, and you didn't ask me that, but I'm going to tell you anyhow, mm-hmm. is that all I had to pay per semester was $150.
Really?
That was the hardest $150 to get. Everything else was paid for. Mm-hmm. But $150 was a struggle per semester to get.
Mm. What was some advice that you would give to someone graduating college or getting their life kind of started? What would you tell them to?
I'd tell them if they were you say starting college or finishing?
They're getting ready to graduate or they already graduated and
from
they're
college,
starting their life.
I would say determine some objectives for your life. Mm-hmm. What do you plan to do as far as employment? What do you plan to do about finances or financial stability? Mm-hmm. What do you plan to do educationally? And how do you plan to do that? Do you plan to take a break, but not so long that you lose the desire to get back in school? Think about marriage, and be sure to not rush into marriage. Enjoy life. Enjoy the person that you're going to marry. You know. The other one is, and this may sound crazy coming from a preacher, do some parent planning. Do we plan to have 5 children, 2 children? I'm talking about planning now. Whether it happens or not, it could be more. But you don't want to bring children into a world and they not be cared for properly. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm talking about? Yeah. And always put God in your life. You call him whoever you want to call him. I've been excited to hear these new terms for God. The universe. I'd never heard of that before. Oh, you must know about it because I can tell. And I don't understand it. But you got to have a spiritual guidance that talks to your mind.
Mm.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps any.
It did. So it depending on what stage in your life that it was, you grew up in the South. You're from the South. Did you have any type of like racially motivated or discriminatory encounters that really stuck with you?
Yes. Now, I was hoping you'd ask me about the civil rights movement
Yes.
and
Talk
social
about that stuff.
justice. When I remember, first of all, having to pass white schools
Mm-hmm.
to go to what they called the colored school. That's when I first realized. And in that process, I never had a white teacher till I had the Bible teacher. You know, white folks, think they got to teach the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the 12th grade. Never had a white teacher. But I always had the black teacher who would say, you've got to be better. You got to work twice as hard. And then you got to be secure within yourself. Okay. It was in Chattanooga I guess it was my senior year, it could have been junior year, when the sit-down movement started. And so I was in the first sit-down movement in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Where'd you go?
We went to Woolworth's and just sat while we were being heckled, stuff thrown at us, not to mention our people of color saying, oh, let the Lord work all of that out, when the Lord was using us to work it out. One of the interesting things that got me is one night we had gone to a football game, and on the way back, the transit service was filled. I was sitting on front. Now, I was trained to give my seat to a woman if I was sitting and there was a woman standing. So, a woman got on the bus who happened to have been white.
Mm-hmm.
I got up so she could sit down. She refused to sit down because she would have to sit between black people.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Then my dad moved to another part of the city after he was given the supervisory role of a district. And he moved in an area which was basically white.
Mm-hmm.
I was even scared to walk 3 blocks to the drugstore by myself. But one night I saw the Ku Klux Klan come up the street.
Really?
In their garb. Then one night they burned a cross at the house next door to us. I was in the sit-ins. I was in the bus boycotts. I was in the pray-ins. I was asked to be one of the lead preachers, leading marches. This all was in Chattanooga in the 60s. When I started working at Zales Jewelers, white people would not come to me. They didn't want that colored man waiting on me.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting about me, I learned everything in that jewelry store. And back in that day, they had what was called a mother's ring. You ever heard of the mother's ring? The mother's ring had birthstones of all your children.
Yeah. I've heard of that, yeah.
Okay? It had to be made in the store. No one knew how to do it. but me. So when they didn't, they say, "Oh no, I don't want, I don't want that colored man waiting on me." So they get up and find out and say, "Well, I want this mother's ring." He said, "He's the only one knows how to make them." So they wound up having to come to me anyhow. So the civil rights movement was taking place. I remember the day that Martin Luther King got killed. I was on the bus coming from school in Atlanta to Chattanooga, home. And I couldn't understand why everything looked so sad because I didn't know King had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, got off the bus and found that out. I was able to stand in line and view his body.
Really?
And the blessing was he had been my commencement speaker at Wilberforce.
Oh wow. Did you meet him when it happened?
Met him.
How'd that go? What happened?
You shake hands. They as many as could get to him.
Mm-hmm.
He would just shake hands. That was so exciting.
Did you remember what you said to him? Or
I just said hello. That's all.
That's all you got?
Yeah. And then I remember, can I give you one more? Yeah. I got off the bus, and I don't know where I was. I must have been coming from Ohio. And the bus stopped in Nashville, Tennessee. I got off the bus because I had to change buses going to Chattanooga. And so when I got off the bus, I went right in, sat where everybody else sat.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had to remind me, you're supposed to go in the back. Because that's where the colored waiting room was, which was most insulting.
Yeah. Did you, when you were a kid, did you have any that you remember besides going to the different school and having to go past the white schools?
Do I remember?
Yeah. Do you have any other memories from when you were a kid, like a kid?
I remember. You talking about some kind of prejudice thing? Yes, I remember one in particular. This happened in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'll never forget. And we left Knoxville in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember this one. A couple of friends of mine, we were maybe 12. Out walking with way out. And we were going by this grocery store. And the man who was driving, sort of like a Fritos truck, said to the woman at the store, "You better get out of this, son. You'll be as black as these boys."
Oh,
I still remember.
that's awful.
I still remember. That was back in the 50s, but I still remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Or let me give you another one. We lived in Fayetteville, and I decided that I was going to buy Kathy a car. She was going to have to pay the note, but I was going to I picked it. So I went in Chattanooga and picked out a car. And I came out, and I heard this man back here say, "Is that nigga gone yet?"
Oh,
wow. But the next week I went back and bought the same car. And the man said, "I'm sorry for what that man said." I said, "Oh, don't worry, I've been called worse." So that was back in the day when you had to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And people could not tell you who you are or call you any name that demeaned you.
Yeah. So fast forward, how old were you when you got married?
Car. 24.
24. So, how did you know that you wanted to get married?
I knew I didn't like being separated from Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause she was in school. I was in school in Atlanta. I didn't like all of that.
How did that go for you guys?
Well, letter writing and calling. We didn't need to be right under each other because
Mm-hmm.
I don't play that. I don't like folks right under me. I don't care who it is. Don't just hang under me. And she didn't need it either.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that she'd get married after she got out of college. She was your age, 22,
Mm-hmm.
when we got married.
When did you meet Mother and Aunt Lorraine?
I met them while I was in college because I sang with the Wilberforce Choir.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy sang with the Wilberforce Choir. So when we come to Cleveland to do concerts, then I got a chance to meet her mother, her grandmothers, her sister. Yeah.
How did
No,
that
her
go?
sisters.
Do you remember when you first met them, or
Mm-hmm.
how'd that go?
Well, they gave me Kathy's mother in particular, and her mother, gave me the once over. But Lorraine liked me because I had back in that day, my hair was really nice, big waves, just nice. She liked that. And Nisi just enjoyed having a big brother.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So it was easy for you to kind of.
Yeah, it was easy. It was always easy. I knew how to. I always knew how to deal with people, with their behaviors. Once you see them and learn them, you can deal with it.
Yeah. Do you remember what the wedding planning process was like? How was that like? How involved were you in the
I was
planning?
not.
You weren't?
I was not. I was in Tennessee, and Kathy was doing it up here.
Mm-hmm. How did your parents react to you telling them you were gonna get married?
Well, Kathy had visited before we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And spent the week with them because I was in school in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was in school, she stayed with them. And so they began to be all right with it.
Were they happy at first?
Mm-hmm.
Or?
Yeah. Because Kathy has a way of people like her. It's a natural trait for her.
Do you remember any specific things that like your dad told you, but when like prior to getting married, or did he not really talk to you about that?
He didn't really talk to me about that.
He didn't give you any like advice or nothing?
No. I used his life as an example of what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
He was always busy, and I really didn't want Kathy to be without my presence. Even though I was busy, I knew I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. When we first got married, and we had rented a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was 2 years where we lived. She didn't know how to pay a light bill, a telephone bill, water bill, utility. Because I took care of all of that. Because my belief was and still is that the husband is responsible to take care of the house.
Mm-hmm. If you had to give newlyweds any advice, what would you tell them?
The first thing I would tell them, and You asked me a question that I've answered so many times before as I've counseled people.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they are becoming one, and that's what the vow says. I do it like this. Even though you've become as one, can you see this? Even though you've become as one, okay? I'm still right here. That's still Wesley. And this is still Kathy. So you have to allow Wesley to be Wesley and Kathy to be Kathy. And to remember that they have their own personalities. And the responsibility is for these two to grow like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about how a tree grows, the limbs start crossing each other. But it doesn't take place right now. It takes time. And you have to let each one have his own space. Just take just take the phone off.
All of them? Because the other one's going to ring.
Okay. Come on. You don't have that much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell them the one thing no, there are two things, and I'm gonna leave this alone. I tell them you come to me to get married. Now come to me to stay married.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The second thing I tell them is, and I can't put a handle on why it is, but God keeps them together. They've got to have God in this relationship.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you became a parent?
Um, oh my, wait a minute, let me see. 30? 30 years old.
30? Okay, so talk about that process.
That's an interesting question. I had become all right with just Kathy and me.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Kathy, I was not caught up in this. We got to have this child concept.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think women have a desire to have a baby, and that's something women do. I suspect. I don't have a female mind, and so after a while, Kathy had an ectopic pregnancy, and so the doctor says to us, she will not be able to have children. I was gonna be all right with it.
Mm-hmm. At first, did you have any feelings, or were you immediately kind of okay with that?
I was okay with it, and I said to Kathy the other week, if it had been a choice between saving you and if it had been baby born and saving the baby, what would you've done? And she said, I don't know. I'd already made up my mind back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was no choice. I was going to save Kathy.
Yeah.
Because we could have had.
You can always.
There you go.
Figure it out later.
Okay, yeah. And so, but Kathy was wanting this child. And so she had to convince me. Now, this is some of that male, masculine mess. To adopt
Why
a child.
Why were you anti-adoption at first?
Because men got a thing, it has to be my child.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to wrestle with that. She'd already put it together that that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrestled with it. And after a while, I finally gave in. And I'd gone to a conference because the bishop had made me dean over all of the educational programs in that district, which included Kentucky and Tennessee. So I was in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in this church, and the lady said, "Are you Reverend Reid?" I said, "Yeah." "You got a call." And it was Kathy to tell me that the social worker heard and said, "There's a baby available, a boy," because that's what I wanted first, a boy. So now I got to rush back so she could be excited and explain about this boy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at all excited, no. Yeah, she was all up excited. But then when we got Kevin, my approach, my mental state changed.
Once you saw him and spent time with him.
My mental state changed. And I'm the one who took care of him.
Mm-hmm.
I know your grandmother's told you this. Because she taught school. So I kept him all day. And if he cried at night, I got up and took care of him. Because she had worked all day. That's my piece. And then when Tamika came, your mama, who did not like me, could not stand me, cried whenever I looked her way.
How old were they both when you adopted him? Do you remember?
Let's see. Kevin was 8 months,
Uh-huh.
and Tamika was 5 months.
Do you remember? You changed their names, right? You gave them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you remember what their names were before?
No, I don't.
Mm.
I think the birth certificate may carry the names.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, Tamika finally fell in love with me.
How long did that take? How old was she, roughly?
Tamika came in 75. I guess. Oh, I don't even remember. Not too terribly long. Because I'm a loving father. You know I know how to spoil.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know. You know, like I do you. Mm-hmm.
What were some of your favorite memories from when they were smaller?
One memory, I got two about Kevin. One is the night that Kathy was in the bed, sitting lying on the bed. Kevin was in his robe, and he was walking through the hallway, and I said, "Boo!" And to watch him run, first time was amazing. The other thing that I remember about Kevin, he was in his bedroom, which is next to ours, and he was sick that night. And he got out of the bed. He was a baby like, and instead of going to his mother, he came to me. I could always handle him,
Mm-hmm.
because we had grown this bond. Yeah, and so that was on that one. And when I got moved from Fayetteville to Louisville, that really was a nice bond between all of us. But when I came to Cleveland and I brought Tamika, now that's when she wouldn't go anywhere without her daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember so very vividly, In fact, a woman said to me in Columbus at the General Conference, I remember your daughter. I said, you do? Because everywhere you went, she was right there holding your hand. And then we'd go to a big meeting, and if I disappeared, she'd knock on every door until she found me. Yeah. So she really was a daddy's girl.
Aw. What about your parental style? Like, how would you describe it? Were you the more disciplinary parent between the two of you, or who kind of fit into what roles between you and Grandma?
All right. She could get upset. Uh, Tamika, you'd have to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
You could whip her all day long. And she's going to yell and her. But to get her together, you had to sit and talk to her head. And my job was to sit and talk to her head. Let her blow up. Then sit and talk to her head. Now, if the blow up needed punishment, I'd say it to both of them, Kevin and Timmy. What should I do?
That's a scary question.
Should I whip you? What should I do? And they ain't got sense enough to say, just talk to us. They ain't had that kind of sense. No, well, give us the whipping. See, what they didn't understand is I had already whipped their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And all they had to do was say, nothing. And I would have done nothing.
They never figured it out.
Never figured it out. Because I'd whipped their minds.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you control people, is minds.
Yeah. Who got more whoopings growing up?
It all depends on who you're talking about. I think Tamika got.
She got more, probably.
Probably.
What kind of stuff did she do?
Can I say name it? It was more she and her mother always were.
Bumping heads.
I remember one day it was snowing here in Cleveland, and I don't know how many inches we had, but she had fallen out with her mom. She was young, and had walked over to Delmore. You know what Delmore is? Over there,
So.
go over there. You know, you come to Noble, Monticello.
Oh, yeah.
All right, you go right,
Mm-hmm.
and you make a left at the first street. That's Delmore. You go all the way down to the end.
She walked over.
She walked in the snow and said, I'm not coming back until my daddy comes home.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew how to blend them together.
Mm-hmm.
I was the anchor.
What was probably the worst altercation they got into that you can remember?
Oh, my. As a child.
It could be a kid or
Usually,
a teenager.
usually it was about a dress or her clothing. That's usually. And every now and then her mouth got her in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it passed on to generations.
Just a little.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are some of your proudest parent moments that you can remember?
For Kevin. To see Kevin develop as a young man and to see him always coming by the office to check on me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the very night that he got killed, he had just come by the office. Hey, Dad. Knocked on the basement door. It's about 10 o'clock because I work late. Oh, I just came by to see what you were doing. Because they always like to come around me. My children love to come around me.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't know we were going to have fun as family. And so he was always protective. Now, the craziest thing is, your mother was more protective of him than he was of her.
Really?
She was always going to take up for him. But I was proud of Kevin. Because the night that he got killed, he had his grandmother's car.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw the keys away so they couldn't take her car. So that was a proud moment for me. I always wondered what would he be if he had lived. Now for your mother, I got so many proud moments of her.
Mm-hmm.
To watch her develop and control her mind and her emotions is proud for me because her emotions and her feelings could really mess her up at times. And I see it getting better. She took me to the doctor one day. And I went in the doctor. I came out. And what did the doctor say? He says, I'm fine. What else did I said, that's all. She got upset. Didn't speak to me for 2 days. But her concern, her love of God, her love and protection for her children, her independence, which I really don't like as much as she would like for me to like.
Why is that?
Because I need her to understand you can be independent as well as dependent when you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But she she hadn't gotten over there yet. Does that make some sense about your mother?
Yeah.
She hadn't gotten over there.
She's not always comfortable asking for help.
Yeah, there you go. When she needs.
Even if she really does, she won't admit it.
Yeah, that. So I'm trying to get her out of that. I'm proud when she is proud. You know, she's real proud when I'm on something with her.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's in her world then.
Yeah.
I'm proud of her in her ministry. Yeah, the Awakened ministry. I'm proud of her benevolent spirit, her generous spirit that she got from me. I'm proud of her anointing.
When you became a grandparent, well, right before.
Oh Lord Jesus.
Right before you became a grandparent,
Uh-huh.
what were you excited about, or like just what were your general feelings when you found out you were going to be a grandparent?
Oh, I was excited that I was going to be a grandparent. I was excited to do something that I didn't have done for me. When I was born, my grandparents had already died.
Mm-hmm.
So now I get to see what it is to be a grandparent, to love on grandchildren. When I heard that I was going to be a grandparent, I then determined I got to help take care of my baby.
How did mommy tell you?
I don't even remember. I don't
You
even remember. That's been 100 years ago.
No, it has not. Mm-hmm. Do you remember if you and grandma talked about anything about being grandparents? Did you guys talk about how you felt about it, or things you guys wanted to make sure you did, or anything?
I knew we wanted to make sure that Tamika would be taken care of. Not that she wasn't going to be by her husband, but you know, that mama daddy piece got into it. And we wanted to make sure that she was all right after the birth of her children, so that we wanted to make sure she came here
Mhm.
so we could be mama and daddy. Well, I could be daddy. Cause mama wanted to be grandmama.
Mhm.
I wanted to take care of my baby. I said that one Sunday morning. I was talking about, was it your birth? I guess it was. And I said in worse, I don't know why, what I was preaching about. And I gave this illustration. I said, when she was born, everybody was running to go see the baby. I said, I'm not moving. I'm staying right here with my baby as she recovers from this birth thing.
Mhm. What were some expectations you had um, as a new grandparent that were met, or some that were not? Like, how did you think it was gonna be, and was it how you thought it was gonna be, or were you wrong about some stuff?
I thought that I'd be able to babysit my grandchildren, which I did and took pleasure in. I also wanted to make sure that they had a good future financially. Mhm. I also wanted to be the granddaddy that they love, just to be around and feel that they could say anything they wanted to, and granddaddy would listen and talk and give advice whether they wanted to or not, or
Mhm.
whether they wanted to follow the advice or not. But just to talk about what I did and how that could help them in their lives.
Mhm. Do you feel like you were able to kind of do all of those things so far?
I think so. I think I've helped to mold their thinking. Uh, I get excited with Joshua, who does not open up with a whole lot of folk, but will open up to me and say some stuff
Mhm.
that some you all don't know,
Yeah.
and I'm excited about that relationship.
Mhm. What are some of your favorite memories with us?
One of the favorite memories I have was with you because when you were born, your mother was singing in the gospel choir at the church house.
Mhm.
My job when she came for choir rehearsal was to have your bassinet in my office.
Mhm.
And you would be in the bassinet, and my job was to take care of you and to keep the folk off of kissing on you.
Mhm.
Because they come, have you seen the baby? Have you seen the baby's in pastor's office? Come on, let's go.
How did you keep them?
I said, okay, now she's a new baby, and we don't know what her problems may be health wise,
Mhm.
and so don't kiss all over her. I said, nah, because she doesn't like for me to kiss her when my mustache or my skin has not been shaved. I don't know if you even remember that.
No.
You, granddaddy, don't do that. That hurts, granddad.
What about any other ones with me, and then some with Josh?
The thing about you is that you were similar to your mother. You were going to find me. I don't know if you remember any of this. You were going to find me
Yeah.
wherever I was. I remember someone passed in your family, and your great uncle. No, yeah, that'd be your uncle. Yeah, your uncle. You were about this tall,
It was probably my grandma.
and you had the repast was at Lee Memorial.
It was probably my grandma.
I was at the back of the hall. Everyone else was up this way, and And here in a few minutes, here you come toddling to me. And your uncle says, this is the one that had the barber shop or the beauty shop, said, look at her finding her granddaddy. That was the way you always did. You'd always come to my office. Well, and then you wanted to mimic me one time.
I did.
Yes. And I can't remember what the wording is, but I'd step my foot. And then you did it to me one day, which was exciting and interesting. You were always looking for me.
I remember one time I was in your office, me and Joshua in your office, and we ate a whole sleeve of communion.
Yes.
And my stomach was hurting, and Mom didn't even feel bad for me. My stomach was hurting.
Yeah. In fact, you and Josh thought my office was your office.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you all would come, you walk right in, hang your coats up in my closet because that was your office. For Joshua, the memorable things about Joshua is that when Josh would get in a world and no one else could handle him, he would wind up getting to me. Although he's much closer to his grandmother than he is to me. But he'll listen to me. I can talk to his head. I've discovered that. Now, I hope I'm answering your questions.
What advice would you give to someone who either or has both married children or who has grandchildren or both? What would you tell to somebody who has children who are married or has grandchildren or has married children with children or both?
Let me work through that.
Uh-huh.
What advice would I give
to somebody who has kids who are married? Let's start there.
Okay. Let them have their own lives. Don't get in their space until they give you opportunity to get in their space. Now, opportunity doesn't have to be verbal. Okay. Opportunity can be physical, you can feel the vibe, and you just move. But you have to let them have their space. And then as you let them have their space, and then when they bring you into that space, if there's something negative, find a way to say it in a loving manner so it doesn't sound punitive. Okay. Don't get in until you're invited in. Am I saying this for a reason?
No.
Okay. Now go to the second part.
So what advice would you give to people who are new grandparents?
New grandparents. Love on your grandchildren, the babies. But don't take over the mama's time or the father's time. Love on them, but don't smother them. And I think that's what I would advise. Well, let me ask you. Have I smothered you?
No.
But you know how much I love you. That's what I'm talking about. I don't try to help you. I don't try to do, your mama tries to tell you, Riley, do that. Have you thought about this? And I just let you talk. And then I take what you're saying and I try to help charter that. That's what I would do as a grandparent. Assure the grandchildren that you are with them, that you got their back. Let them know they are loved in such a way that I don't have to worry. I know my granddaddy. For instance, like I know my granddaddy do this.
Mm-hmm.
I know he gonna tell me he doesn't have it, but I'm gonna tell him, oh yeah, you got it, or you can get it. But that's because of a relationship that is developed.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have a relationship, a granddaddy, granddaughter relationship.
Yeah. So you got two more.
Okay.
So the first one is, how old were you when you lost both of your parents? Because I know you lost them at different times.
Right. I was, I think, 39. Yeah. Yeah. I was 39 when my mother passed,
Mm-hmm.
which was horrible. Horrible. I just left 2 weeks ago, Kevin and Tamika with her. We went to Oklahoma City to a meeting. Came back, because that's when Kevin uh, burned his foot.
Mm-hmm.
Came back, I was about to say your mother and Kevin up. And my mother would not come to the door to say goodbye to me.
Really?
And I said, oh, I got ready to get in the car. I said, oh, let me go back here and hug my mom. And afterwards, I said, oh, she knew that was the last time she was going to see me. Horrible.
What? How did she pass away?
She had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible.
What were some ways that you kind of coped with her passing?
Crying.
Mm-hmm.
Crying. Missing her. Every time I'd had a chance, because my dad was still living, go to Chattanooga, make sure I went to the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Spent some time in the cemetery with him.
How did he kind of, from what you could see, how did he deal with her passing?
One of our friends, one of their friends who happened to be a bishop, came to the funeral. And he went with us to the cemetery. And he said, I remember these words so vividly, I've never seen your daddy cry. And I've known your daddy 50 years.
Yeah.
I've never seen my daddy get emotional.
Ever. Not one time.
Not ever. Not ever. So I really don't know how he dealt with it.
He never said anything.
And the good piece is that he was beginning to move into mental disability,
Mm-hmm.
which could help him. When my dad died, what was that? I was 47. It was not as rough because he was 95 or 96. It was not.
It wasn't a shock.
No, not really a shock, but my mother's death was a shock. Yeah. So I was able to deal with my dad's day.
Mm-hmm.
It was the year before Kevin got killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did your siblings, what was you guys' relationship like, or after both were there?
Well, I was close to all of them, but I suspect, closer to Joe and Clyde, but also close to my sister, because I used to spend all of my summers with her. And my sister didn't do well with my dad's death.
Mm-hmm.
She was his only girl. And so she had a major problem with his death.
Mm-hmm.
And as she was going through her latter years of dementia, she'd talk about her missing her daddy.
Yeah. What were some of the things that she would remember still, even though she was some things she would just never forget about?
Oh, how she loved him, man. How she was his only girl. Now that's the thing she played on. I was the only girl. My daddy, my daddy. See, her mother died when she was young
Mm-hmm.
from yellow fever.
Yeah.
So she didn't know much about her mother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about your dad? What were some things that he kind of never forgot about? Were there certain things that he would talk about a lot,
When
even though?
in his dementia state,
Mm-hmm.
he talked about the hymns. He'd sing the hymns of the church. Even though he didn't know me, and I'd go every 3 months to see him.
Mm-hmm.
I lived the farthest away, but every 3 months, I'd go to see him in the nursing home to make sure that they took care of him. And in my mind, I said he took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. Now it's my job to take care of him. But the funniest thing, Riley, is my sister, who had not seen him in about a year, was with me this time. I said, okay, I'm going to pick you up. We're going down. And I'm going to see Daddy, and I know you might want to go. Come on, go with me. I said, okay. I go every 3 months. He does not know me. We get to the room, and I said, no, don't you go in right now. Let me go in. I said, hello. Hey. I said, do you know who I am? No, sir. I said, okay. I said, this is your son Wesley. Okay. My sister goes in. He always called her sister. Sister!
Hmm.
He hadn't seen her in a year. But remembers her. But doesn't remember me.
How'd that make you feel?
I don't really know. I didn't get real upset.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't understand it.
Yeah. Between all of your siblings, who were kind of, when the parents get sick or parents get old, there's usually one or two who would kind of take care of everything. You did for both of them, or?
For both of them. More about my mother. And I said to my mother, I got all these brothers older than I am. Joe is right here with you. Yeah. But I can depend on you to do it.
Mm. Did that affect your relationships with them at all?
I wonder sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I really
What
wonder.
about, like, you obviously might not know from their perspective, but, like, for you, did that affect how you felt, like your relationship with them, or like how you
No.
thought about them or anything?
I just said, fine. I'm called upon to do something. They recognize I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I got the mind to do it. And I'll take the time to do it.
Was it also financially on you, or was it more so just the time part and getting everything together?
And was financial too.
Mm-hmm. So, what advice would you give to someone? Let's do it first. Who lost or knows they're losing a parent?
Is first of all to accept the fact that it's happening. Get hold of yourself and make sure all of the business is intact.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And spend as much time as you can with them.
Mm-hmm. What about for someone who either has lost or is losing a parent, and the majority of that, like it was on you, majority of the responsibility of everything was on them, and they have siblings.
And even though they have
And
siblings, even if they have siblings, for me, my responsibility was to take care of my dad and my mom. However, the Lord had provided for me so I could still do both.
Mm-hmm. So what would you tell that person who was struggling with that?
I tell that person, follow what your mind says to do, not your emotions, your mind. It's what I call the Spirit speaking. And when you follow what your mind says, it says to me, for me, I'm following what the Spirit of God wants me to do. And it's going to work out.
Last question.
For real.
Yes. So this video is gonna be saved, so it'll be accessible for years.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you want if whether they meet you or not, what would you want your future great grandchildren, whatever, to know about you in general that you may not have shared in the video?
I don't know if I've not shared,
or something you just want to highlight.
But I want to lift the fact that I believe in family. I believe that family has to work together. I believe that family has to develop each other. Now, you don't know this, and the rest of your family doesn't know this. So since this is for posterity, I put together what I've called a generational wealth plan, where I've set aside or started setting aside dollars so that we can build generational wealth. And I haven't written it out. And some people tell me put it in the trust fund. I got to think through all of that. But I want it to be a financial base for our family. And that each generation would continue to put funds into the wealth program. So that when Riley decides, I want to go into business, or I want to buy a house, and I need $10,000 for down payment. You go to the Inherited General Wealth Fund. Borrow the money from the interest, not the principal. Determine how long it's going to take for you to put that $10,000 back. So that the Reids don't have to go to the bank. Because most of the Reids may not have good credit to go. I mean, just in case. So you go to your family. I know you all don't know I'm putting it together. I just haven't gotten it in my mind. How? But I never want the principle depleted. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
It's what I call black inherited generational wealth. It's something like what the Jews do.
Yeah.
And so now I know what I need to spend to live. So I take the extra, since I don't need it,
and put it there.
And put it into this fund for the next generation. And I expect the next generation to put it for the next generation.
Mm-hmm. So, this is the same question. So, there's
Oh,
no
okay.
more
I thought you
questions.
said it was the last.
It is. So, if your great grandchildren were watching this video right now, what do you want to say to them?
Enjoy life. Use all of your abilities to the best of your ability. Be generous. Don't be cheap. But don't be overly spending. Find your niche in life. Live it out. But as a preacher, I got to say, have a relationship with your maker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
That's what you want them to know?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thanks, Granddaddy.
And you can't tell about this generational wealth plan.
I won't say nothing.